Nothing really happened over the weekend, and nothing is really going to happen this week.
So what's the anxiety then?
So there's an announcement of tariffs, which were pretty much set in stone for the past couple of months, were going to be announced. I mean, we knew that. The question was, are they going to go at 10%, or are they going to go at a range between 5 and 25%? So in some ways, this is actually sort of a bullish signal that they said, no, let's push this down to 10%. Beyond that, this is about the trade talks and whether it throws off the trade talks, and that's based around implementation. So you have a question around when will the president actually come around to implementing these tariffs, and that is unlikely to happen in the next couple of weeks.
So, Leland, you think an announcement could come this week saying we're going to roll these on in a few weeks? Or
tariffs coming. We've been hearing that. It's the same type of announcement we've been seeing. Now, if you implement them...
That's why the market's not.
Well, that's why markets are looking. They don't like the signal, but this is not them implementing tariffs. You've got the next 2 weeks, the administration has some things planned, a surprise, and they'd like to push the implementation of the tariffs beyond September into October because of that. And so then you have a question of whether...
What do you mean a surprise?
It rhymes with schmafta. So you have...
If we get a NAFTA agreement and we can get Canada and Mexico on board, and then you can go ahead with this threat of potential tariffs, you figure it gives a very strong negotiating hand to the United States when it comes to China?
Right. So you don't want to, if you're going to have a victory tour on another trade issue, which they're looking to do, then you want to push the China stuff off so it doesn't suck the oxygen out of the air. So then you're looking at October, you're looking at the implementation of tariffs, and then you have these trade talks. If you have looming tariffs, I think Liu He comes to the United States. If you have implementation of tariffs, particularly possibly happening when he's here, then he doesn't come. So then maybe you push the tariffs off a little bit further, and then what are we talking about again? This week was really not that interesting after all.
Who has influence in this conversation? The big Wall Street CEOs, many of them were in China, in Beijing last week, trying to talk to Chinese officials about this. Historically, they've actually typically had the powers of persuasion on some of these issues, both in China and, by the way, in Washington. And it appears they might not have it in either right now.
Well, I don't think it's up to them right now. I think the Chinese would do a deal in a second if they got the opportunity. The question is whether Trump thinks that he wants it and he needs it. Poll numbers will dictate this, but he thinks that tariffs are a winner. So right now, it's entirely what's inside the president's head and whether you have a deal. I think the mistake markets are making is think that all this noise distracts from the possibility that there could be a deal in the fall. Now, there doesn't need to be a deal. There may not be a deal, but none of this has changed the idea that there could be a deal on the same terms and the same timeline as we've been talking about for the last several months. So I think markets have been swaying with all the white noise, but they don't realize that if the president wants a deal, that the deal window is there if he wants it.
Okay, because I know you've studied the various tariffs and all of the various permutations, is there any surprise company or industry that you think either gets hit or that is a beneficiary that we're not thinking about?
I think people are going to watch Apple for the simple reason that they understand that if you're really a trade wonk, you understand that most of the iPod and the iPad, they're produced, it'll hit China, but it'll also hit U.S. companies and foreign companies even more. It'll hit the U.S. consumer more. You've got Christmas coming up. So I think that's going to be this signal about how seriously the president...
That's the
proxy for how much the administration is keeping an eye on consumers. They say they're not watching it, but you can't completely do that. You've got midterms coming up. You've got Christmas coming up. You can't ignore the consumer, and that's why you're seeing the level set at 10%. A lot of internal battles inside the White House about whether you can get away with doing it higher than that.